All right. Hi, everybody. We're going to get going. Thank you for your patience. I really appreciate it. First, I'll hand it over to you guys.
Hello everyone, hola a todos. My name is Veronica and I'm here with Tania. And tonight we're going to be the interpreters for this meeting. Mi nombre es Vero y esta es Tania. Vamos a ser los intérpretes para este junta. Tonight we're doing interpretation to Spanish. So if you need improvement, please let us know. We're in the back. Estamos haciendo interpretación al español. Si necesitan equipo, por favor, vean en la mesa. I think that's it for today.
Okay.
If
Great.
you have anybody who speaks Spanish.
So far, yeah. Thank you.
So far. So yeah, we'll use some signs just in case somebody comes in and we have to do it real quick. So we ask that one person at a time. So una persona a la vez. Si necesitamos que hablen un poquito más lento porque de repente se emocionan, estamos esta seña. So you also, and like you're talking about something that you're very passionate and you start talking like, you're gonna just
I never,
gonna be like,
never.
oh, that a little bit. Also, sometimes like, we're talking and like a voice, like you're whispering. So we're gonna ask you to speak a little louder. We're gonna use this sign. So si necesitamos que hablen un poquito más alto, vamos a usar esta seña. If we need you to repeat an idea or something that you said, we're gonna use this sign. Si necesitamos que repitan alguna idea, vamos a usar esta seña. So if you see us doing it, any of these signs, please help us do it too. But then also, also you need to use them for yourself. Feel free to do it. One more, you need to pause. We're gonna use this sign. Si necesitamos pausar, estamos esta seña.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Maybe just one more thing.
Yeah.
So sometimes we read a lot faster than we speak. So just always keep that in mind. If we're going to read anything, maybe let's just take a couple deep breaths so we are able to catch up with everyone. A veces leemos más rápido que hablamos, entonces por favor mantengan eso en la mente, tomen una respiración, vamos a vivir en su paz.
Gracias, thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Welcome again. My name is Emily Flynn. I'm the Director of Health and Wellness. I'm going to be talking to the screen because the folks online, the microphone is on here. So that's why I'm going to be a little bit awkward right now. A few folks already heard me say it, but I'll say it again. We have a lot of food in conference room 1. It's a food systems plan. We brought food. Please take some. I brought some Ziplocs and there's some containers to take this stuff home. I don't want, it's not going to fit in my fridge. Please take some. Also, we have child entertainment. My 14-year-old is available to be in that room. We've got some construction paper, some pipe cleaners, some Play-Doh. So anybody, that's for all ages. If anybody wants to go and do some sensory play, feel free. All right, so what do I want to say here? So welcome to, we've been working on this project for a long time. In case I didn't say it, I'm the Director of Health and Wellness for the City of Kingston. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm very happy here tonight to present Kristen and Angela, who are going to talk a little bit more in depth about the whole planning process that we went through and what the recommendations are. What else is important to say in this moment? I'll say it probably again at the end, but it's good to say it up front. I want to thank both of you, Kristen and Angela. You did fabulous work on this. I'm really proud to have this plan now be a part of our community. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kristen and we'll start on our presentation.
Yeah.
You want to sit? You want to stand? What would you like?
I'll sit. I think that works. So thank you, Emily. I feel like I know some of you in the room, but not all of you. Oh, I have to speak to the laptop. I'm sorry.
I know.
Oh, this is good.
There you go.
I can be very loud, so that's not a problem. I just want to direct my voice in the right direction. And so, yeah, I was excited to come back to talk about this plan. And that for the folks who do know me, I'm very passionate about food. If you don't know me, once again, Kristen Kessler, my pronouns are she, her. I was here at the City of Kingston as the food and nutrition lead, working on a number of projects within the Department of Health and Wellness with Emily. I am now at the county, so I am the Director of Community Health at Ulster County Department of Health, but this is still such a project that is near and dear to my heart. Also, when I told Emily I was leaving, I said I would come back for this. And so just to let you know, but so we wanted to just set a little bit of groundwork here, a little bit of foundational knowledge on what is a food system. I think we talk about this a lot. You might all here know what a food system is because you came to a meeting about a food systems plan. But in case you do not, it's basically all of the activities, people, and resources involved from getting food from the farm, from the ranch, wherever the food is coming from, wherever it is originating within the land to fork. So farm to fork. So it is everything that happens in there. So as you can imagine, that is a very lengthy, sometimes a lengthy process, sometimes a shorter process, often very complex. And so it includes production, processing, transportation, distribution, access, and waste. So we're looking at the food system, not just from when it gets to your plate and then it ends there, but also what happens afterwards. And they really shape our community health, our local economies. They're connected to so much beyond just agriculture. It's connected to all aspects of our community. And so, oh, this is just more. It's the same bullet points, but with different photos. Look at these adorable children. They're part of the food system. Yeah. And then why create a food system plan?
Oh, there it is. Magical.
I was like, I could come up with that. That's fine. So we wanted to create this plan to help build the blueprint for how the city can support a strong local food system. And so in order to be able to strengthen our system, to support our system, we have to have a map. We have to have a direction of where we're going. And so some of the goals of this plan, they were to improve food security and access to nutritionally dense food for all residents. I think all of the words in there are really important. Because I am a dietitian, so we want to make sure that we're providing food that is nourishing for bodies and not just food to people, and that it's for everybody. It's for all residents. It's not just the people who can afford the food at the farmer's market. If we are paying our farmers, an amount that is worthy of their time, so they are getting a livable wage, it's for everybody. So to coordinate across agencies, so it is, we're making this commitment, we are providing the roadmap, so showing how this work will be done. So that's why we need this plan, is to show how it'll be done as we coordinate across agencies and partners and sectors to strengthen the resilience, equity, environmental sustainability, and long-term local capacity. Once again, this is really, I think, just demonstrating how these food systems, sometimes they're called like food webs, really touches so much in our community, and to prepare for climate, economic, and supply chain disruptions. I think we're all still very familiar with what happened in 2020. And I was working at a grocery store, by the way, in 2020 as their in-store dietitian. And I never thought that I would see empty shelves as much as I did. So I think, the funding source for this originally came from ARPA funding, which was in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So that was an important thing to do. And then what this plan aims to do, wait, is this still me? Yeah, this is still me, great.
Yep.
Is to establish this shared vision. So making this commitment to the community. So we have named it and put it out loud to identify leverage points where the city can take meaningful action. So this is really important too, just to make sure that we're setting this. This is a plan for the city of Kingston. And we know that food systems don't stop at municipal borders, but at the end of the day, this funding came from the city of Kingston. So we had to create some boundaries around that, with acknowledging that a lot of food comes from outside of the city as well. So acknowledging that, but this is a roadmap for the city, hopefully in collaboration with partners, but it's not necessarily a plan that is going to dictate to other community partners what they're doing. It'll hopefully invite them into it, but I just feel like that's an important distinction to note. Offer clear recommendations and implementation pathways, and build systems that endure beyond single programs or administrations, which is really important. We want to build champions and advocates, but it shouldn't rely upon just one person to champion the work. And now I'm going to pass it. Oh, or someone will pass it to Angela.
It will be fun. Do you want to switch the laptop?
Yes, I do. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
I'm gonna come next.
All right, that's awesome. Hi, folks. I'm Angela Hansen, and I'm the CEO of Food Systems Foresight, which is a consulting collective that supported the city of Kingston in this work. And since we're all talking about 2020, it strikes me that that's when I actually met these two fine ladies, because Food Systems Foresight was also supporting a consultative process for the United Nations Food Systems Summit, which happened in 2021. So we convened a series of dialogues about Hudson Valley's food systems and how they were experiencing the shock of the pandemic and what could be learned from that. So in their various roles, these two ladies participated in those dialogues, and we continued to dialogue about food systems in the Hudson Valley. And then we started this collaborative planning process to develop a plan specifically for the city of Kingston. So you'll see some photographs from the work that we did often at the Good Work Institute, the Greenhouse. They were a collaborative partner of us, so an NGO, a Kingston-based NGO. I myself live in the city of Hudson, so I'm a bit of an outsider to this conversation, but it's really a pleasure to be having broader food systems conversations in the Hudson Valley. Yes, dear.
When you say NGOs, can you tell everybody what NGO means?
Sure. So the Good Work Institute, which is where this photograph was taken, is a non-governmental organization or a not-for-profit organization, or it's really a social purpose organization that tries to have positive social impact within Kingston. Full disclaimer, I'm a fellow of the Good Work Institute, so that is also some affiliation to disclaim there. So we had this lengthy year-long consultation process. So we began by planning. We talked about how might we do this work together with Kristen and Emily and many other stakeholders, and we laid out a way of working. And we decided that we needed to do a process that was really inclusive. So we designed many different ways to call in the community, to engage with the community. We did some non-standard things, like we hosted community dinners that were based on different identities that we had some indication may be excluded from current food systems work, or maybe really, really central to food systems work. So by working with stakeholders, we identified the identities that we might want to zoom in on, and we did that and had some really deep dive discussions. And in those discussions and many other stakeholder engagements, like the farmers market or the Earth Fair or the various other places where our teams showed up, we heard a lot of challenges that were facing folks living in Kingston. And these are 6 very, very high level highlights, but I do encourage you to dive into the report because there's a great deal of detail there. But really, food access, transportation, and affordability concerns were very high on folks' radar. And that came up, as we said, from lots of different parts of the city. There was also a clear desire, and we tried to meet this desire in the consultations that we did through having different types of food available, and Emily's mirroring that work here today, but a desire for culturally affirming and nutritious food options, especially when offering any sort of food aid or food support or social safety net offering there, to make sure that's really culturally appropriate. When we go to a food bank, am I able to find foods that are going to make me feel safe in my home and comfortable to cook with? We also heard a great deal of interest in community gardens, school food improvements, and local sourcing. Unfortunately, we've had a changed environment since we heard these messages, and we had a big rally around local food purchasing, and that was a very exciting development. There's been a little bit of a stall in some places on that front, but we definitely heard during our consultations a real need and desire for that connecting to local producers. We heard about a need for stronger local supply chains, so there maybe weren't as many intermediaries or distributors of local products, hard for people to procure the local products that they wanted to get their hands on. We also heard big time concerns about food waste and the environmental impact of that, and how food and food systems can be part of a climate resilience story. So myself, when I was at the farmers market, I feel like all I talked about was food waste and how do we collect it and where do I take it and will you take my food waste? It was a real hot topic for folks, and I'm really pleased to say that we were able to work that into, I think, a real centerpiece of the plan. And then finally, a desire for clarity, for collaboration, and for shared governance. What we're really seeing if we zoom out from the city of Kingston and look to other cities that are developing food systems plans, we're seeing the evolution of food policy councils or food policy networks or working groups about food systems. Every place is going to have their own solution to this challenge, but ultimately the desire that was expressed in Kingston is this one for clarity and collaborative shared governance. So hopefully we give a roadmap that allows that to emerge and really support a resilient food system in Kingston. So with that, ta-da! Here are the 6 priorities and recommendations. So these were an evolutionary process, and they were also a referential process. So as I mentioned, we did a lot of research and we did a lot of listening. And part of our research involved looking at food systems plans that were being developed in other cities. And we also looked globally at what were best practices around developing food systems plans. And so we took those references and we took those concepts and ideas that we found sort of in the United States and other US domestic cities that we saw in other international spaces as well. And we distilled that and mapped it against what we heard in Kingston. And we developed these 6 sort of priority areas and recommendations. And, hopefully these are punchy and sharp and you can remember them and they can empower your work. We have supporting strategies that go through each and every one of them, and I'll go through those now. But there's a few, I think, really luscious graphics as well that we'll probably see on social media as we share this material. Here, this pretty fancy wheel, which we dig a lot. Big fans of the fancy wheel. But I'm going to talk you through these 6 steps, or not necessarily 6 steps. I don't want to, because they're numbered doesn't mean that they're linear. So that was an error on my part. These are all happening sort of all the time. They're interdependent, just like food systems are, right? So the first priority that we landed on is delicious, healthy diets. Right? People in Kingston need access to food that they want to eat and that sustains them. And so delicious was the first word here really on purpose, because we get so much joy and connection and sense of place and purpose from having a meal together, from enjoying our food, from finding it delicious. So we want to make sure we start there. We start with the happy, we start with the joy. And then from there, we work to tackle health and environmental challenges that are associated with this work. So just to give you a sense of the structure of the report, we have these big 6 recommendations. And then underneath each one of those big 6 recommendation areas, there's sort of more tangible strategies. So I'll give you the headline here: delicious, healthy diets. And the objective is to tackle the environmental challenges by listening, co-creating, and acting to ensure that Kingston residents are empowered and able to eat in a way that supports the health of people and planet. Sometimes you hear people talk about One Health. And what we're talking about here when we talk about food systems for that support the health of people and planet is along those lines, right? We're bringing together dual concerns, not just for our people, but also for the planet that supports us and allows us to grow this food. So there's a set of supporting strategies around delicious, healthy diets. And the first one is really kind of a principle. We would like to see the city in all of its divisions and departments and collaborations and initiatives to really center food's role in health, active lifestyles, and social inclusion. And there's a really strong foundation in the work that City of Kingston has already done to support this. So this is not new or radical or a point of departure. This is very in line with where we find the city, but we just want to say, number one, center food. because it's a key driver of health, it's a key driver of an active lifestyle, and it's a key driver of social inclusion, which we all know is a component of our ability to thrive. So after we do that, we promote values-based food and dietary guidelines. So the good food purchasing standards are mentioned here, and you can dive in to understand more about what those are, but those are a really good reference for the city to inform customers and public food purchasers and food service providers and retailers and producers and processors all the different pathways that there are to food systems resilience. And then our third strategy is around addressing diet-related diseases and increasing access to nutritious and minimally processed foods. It's a real hot topic at the moment, the ultra-processed food. We're hearing about it everywhere. And so here we're trying to say, how can we encourage and incorporate minimally processed foods into that delicious, healthy diet? Before I continue to rattle on, everyone tracking with me, everybody understand the structure, the high level one, and then the supporting strategies. Am I speaking too fast, or does anybody have any questions or concerns? All right, let's talk about just food with equity. So I love this one. I love this phrase. I love this concept. I love everything about the idea of just food with equity. And it's about addressing socioeconomic disparities by ensuring just and equitable access to healthy, local, and culturally appropriate food, and tapping into existing knowledge and networks in action. Because the city of Kingston is doing a lot, and it's a lot of things to a lot of people, but it doesn't have an army of food systems advocates. So it really needs to tap into others that are out there and doing the work. And so we highlight a few areas through these strategies we think would be nice doorways in. One, Indigenous wisdom and multicultural leadership to participate in designing interventions in order to increase the equity that are inherent in those interventions, but then also promoting rights-based approaches. So food as a human right is a rights-based approach to alleviating poverty and expanding food access. We're also talking here about advocating for appropriate charitable food options, and again, considering diverse culture and preferences. And then finally, supporting the Kingston School District. This is an important aspect of Kingston's food system. The school district is the primary procurement engine of food in the city of Kingston with regard to school meals. So that means the city itself doesn't have necessarily that lever, that button to push to say, this is how we buy. But collaboration can get us there to deliver that local food system with resilient value chains that we're after. So those are three of the strategies for just food with equity. I think there's one. If I have it right, yeah, there's one more slide. So we have also supporting the emerging solidarity economy and other grassroots activities to ensure we're sort of embedding food within a conversation about other human rights, and investigating options for even more public procurement work towards the right of food for all, the right to food for all. And that's, I think, all of the recommendations in Just Food for Equity. The next one, the hot topic for everyone. I know me, I compost. It's a hot topic for me too. But how do we reduce food waste? How do we manage food waste appropriately? How do we manage the stream of nutrients that are moving through our city and can be beneficial if we capture them? And so we're looking to reduce food waste, and we have these strategies. The first is for the city to really use food waste as an opportunity to serve as a steward for circular economy ideas, notions, and ways of working. So that's what food offers us, right? It's this sort of playground that we all interact with every single day. And as we're bringing out more circular business models, how can food demonstrate the potential and possibility there? So serving as a steward for circular economy and local food systems is the first strategy. Expanding efforts to reduce food waste and build on the Kingston Organics diversion plan. And Emily's going to talk about that a little bit more at the end of the presentation. A lot of interest, a lot of effort, and I think some really great work happening there. And finally, food recovery recovery solution providers, and looking to find large food waste generators and look for opportunities to reduce that waste. So there's lots of innovation in food recovery all across the nation, and there are opportunities to deepen there. The next area is sustainable food production. So we'll jump into how we might expand residents' connection to food production, strengthening linkages to our regional food production and enabling urban agriculture, but also collaborating with rural actors and regional actors, supporting more short food chains. So promoting urban agriculture is obviously one way to get a nice short food chain, but also creating opportunity for local processing and encouraging knowledge sharing around local food processing is a really important spark to get those sustainable practices off the ground. Deepening an ecosystem approach to food systems is something that we're underlining here. And we want to see that sort of reverberate through things like land use planning in collaboration with county and state authorities. And we also want to highlight the opportunity to focus on BIPOC individuals, LGBTQ plus individuals, and youth, these kinds of identities that through our early listening in the project, we heard were maybe more at risk of being excluded from status quo food systems dynamics. The third point is really about making this local food chain or this short food chain more tangible. What are the business models? What are the real things I can do tomorrow? You can join a CSA. I'm very pleased in my 5th year of my CSA and knowing my farmer and knowing his family and knowing where my zucchini comes from in its abundance and where my radishes land up as well is a really great grounding concept. And farmers all around the city of Kingston can offer that to Kingston's residents. And there's also a lot we can do around producer to consumer networks. So we can jump to the next one on resilient supply and distribution. So here we're looking to build place-based resilience to system shocks. We talked about COVID. That is the classic food system shock, right? Everything broke in every different way. And some things we thought might happen and some things we were completely surprised by. So building place-based resilience to shocks and strengthening what we call sort of the hidden middle of food supply chains by expanding market reach of Kingston's food businesses, right? So we have restaurants and primary producers and processors here in the city. How can we expand their reach and make them more resilient? And the strategies we're suggesting here are about strengthening the ability of these historically underrepresented farmers and producers and vendors to respond to institutional bids. It can be really, really difficult to break into the buyer-seller relationship with institutions when you're a small actor. So that is our number one strategy, is to get quite real about what's possible for these suppliers to respond to in terms of procurement. It's always a tension. You want to have that really rigorous, transparent, not corrupt at all process that the institutions use to do procurement, but you also need to be adaptable and you need to be meeting the vendors where they are. And a lot of these smaller businesses simply, don't have the bandwidth to go through, huge procurement hoops to be included in the process. So that's strategy one. The second is around amplifying marketing reach of local businesses. So really, how can we be the bellows to make the flames really rise above and the fire of some of Kingston's local food businesses can grow? The final, well, I'm not totally 1,000% sure it's final. Nope, it's not. It's the final one on this slide. Is around food storage and processing. So this is whole supply chain stuff to encourage seasonal food production and reduce nutrient loss through waste or other degradation. So really encouraging, and Kingston's been doing Kristen was championing when she was still with the city, a lot of really inspired work about drawing attention to specific fruits and vegetables with specific recipes that can really get us in the mood for eating this kind of food when it's seasonal, available, plentiful, and delicious. So that's an example of a place where, you know, perhaps the city is already doing some really great things there. The fourth one is around retail food outlets that accept SNAP. So if you dive into the details in the report, you'll see a map that shows, you know, where we have disparity, where we have high saturation of SNAP accepting retailers and where we don't. And there's some work to do there to try and bring up those numbers of SNAP accepting retailers. And then also we offer a strategy around developing more food-based enterprises that are either coming from or serving populations that, as we mentioned earlier, through our listening process, we heard were at risk of being sort of boxed out of food system status quo. So our very last one, adaptive and inclusive food governance. And I hope that when we talk about this, it feels like your slide. I hope you all feel like you're part of the future of Kingston's adaptive and inclusive food systems governance, because that to me would be the win, that you feel compelled to be part of the conversation, that you feel compelled to continue to build relationships with others so that you can collectively respond to emergence in food systems by listening to the system and also collaboratively evolving in response to new challenges and opportunities that are brought about by the shocks and stressors that we know are coming. It wasn't like COVID was the one thing that really messed up our food systems and now we're golden since it's over. There's going to be one more after another after another. And so we offer these strategies to support the ideas and the inspirations that are in this room about how might we come together to form adaptive and inclusive food systems governance in Kingston. So we can see an opportunity and a role for the city to facilitate collaboration across its own departments, really, you know, singing from the same hymn sheet here within the city, and to ensure the allocation of appropriate resources within the administration to adopt and mainstream a rights-based approach to food. So that's sort of the cornerstone, the linchpin, the mental model, the point of departure, is that we all have a right to food. It's in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It's been there a long time. How do we deliver on it? The second strategy is around participating in disaster risk reduction strategies. So, you know, we are going to be facing so many challenges related to climate change and migration as a result of that. We already are. And so we know disaster risk reduction is an important process. And it's also important that the city of Kingston really integrate its thinking about food systems with its disaster risk thinking. And third one here is around connecting local initiatives and movements in order to transform what we're calling, you know, best or leading practices into relevant policies and programs. Yeah, I feel that, buddy. So we just have two more and then you're done governing Kingston's food systems. Okay, so sustainable stakeholder participation and regularly revising this plan. This plan is not meant to be static. It is meant to be lived. These are principles. That wheel is rolling, right? So this is how do we actively engage, continue to engage, revise the plan, change the plan, adapt, and show up in a way that meets the moment. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Emily to talk about what happens next. And I thank you for your participation and your listening. You did a good job.
So just a little bit about what do we go from here? So now we've got these really great recommendations, and I'll talk a little bit more about Live Well in just a minute. But as the plan has identified, we want to, as you mentioned, cross-agency alignment. We really want to work with our partners, both within the city of Kingston and then our non-government organizations and not-for-profit partners. I think so much of the plan really talks about listening to the community and having the community decide to come up with the strategies for solutions. So I think that's really important. Of course, an ongoing goal for all of our work is to track the progress of what we've done so we can show that we've made impact, that we're making good change, that we're moving in the right direction. And then the values of this plan that we'll try to incorporate is centering a resilient, just, delicious food future for Kingston, which is, I think, a bit of a vision there, which we'll try to shoot for. So we heard Angela talk about in the plan, so many people talked about wanting to do more organics, food waste recovery. So if I don't get the credit for this. This is Julie Noble's been working on this for years, but I can happily announce that in case you didn't already hear, phase 2 is the compost collection curbside at your residence here in the city of Kingston. You can go to Engage Kingston tonight and sign up. I just signed up. It's a pretty simple form. It doesn't kick off until the spring. The city is going to provide buckets that we'll put out on the curb and that will be collected weekly. I'm very excited about this program. I don't know all of the details of it, but there's a lot more on Engage Kingston. So we're very happy to know that we're already moving forward with some of the recommendations of this plan. So I'm very pleased to talk more about that one. And then structurally, so how we'll move this work forward. In case any of you aren't familiar, my department, the Department of Health and Wellness, we coordinate the Live Well Kingston Health Commission, of which we have a subcommittee called Eat Well. We're going to ask Eat Well to review this plan, I think it's especially important to come up with those first steps so that you build momentum. So we're going to try to brainstorm what our priorities are, and then we'll start to try to move down the list of what we can accomplish. Live Well Kingston is already a collaborator. It's a commission and focus teams. So it's a natural way to continue to bring the different not-for-profits and different folks together in the same room. I wouldn't be surprised if we also created a kind of task force that just looked specifically at how to move this plan forward. But for now, we're going to keep it within Eat Well. And if I haven't already personally invited you, if anyone is interested in any of that work, please come to our meetings. Please reach out to me and I'm happy to connect you in whatever way that you'd like to be involved in that. I think then probably my most important request of you all tonight is to go to engagekingston.com and submit a comment. I didn't bring comment sheets, but you can also tell me your comment and I will write it down and record it that way. But if you are able, I'd love it if you would go to engagekingston.com, the food systems plan, and submit your comment by July 7th. We will record all of that and add it as an addendum to the plan. If there's any minor edits, if there's anything that anyone sees that thinks really important that needs to be in this plan, we'll try to do some updates to it. After that collection, after we collect all of the comments, the last thoughts that you all have on it, we will collect that all together and bring it to the Common Council for them to approve. That I think will solidify our commitment to move in this direction. Final thing to say to that is that this will build upon really a stack of plans that the city of Kingston has done. And I believe that in a few years, the city of Kingston will be revising its comprehensive plan. So this will hopefully feed into that. The comprehensive plan is really the structure for setting the entire city's direction. So I think it's really great that we have this plan now because it'll feed into those conversations in the next couple of years. With that, that's pretty much the end of our presentation. We'd love for questions, conversation. We'd love to continue talking about this. Anybody got any questions in the room? And before we break up, I'll say to the folks that are online, if you have a question, just raise your hand and I'll make you a member of the webinar and then you can ask your question or you can put it in the chat and I'll read it out loud for you. But anybody here? Yeah.
What's that strategy you have to try to make sure that the food you're going to bring to those 5 important?
Great question.
Yeah. So the plan doesn't talk about necessarily the city bringing food to everything. So the plan is about how the city coordinates actors, because what's real about Kingston's food systems is that there are dozens and dozens and dozens of actors who come together to bring food to people. So those can be private sector actors, they can be not-for-profit actors. And so affordability becomes, you know, a challenge that is addressed by lots of different types of actors, and the city's really only one of them. So they can encourage actors to, you know, do their best on with regard to affordability, but there isn't anything that is like, we don't have a subsidy proposal or anything that comes directly financially at affordability in the plan. But we do highlight that it's a central issue, that we need to put it at the center of all of our planning and ensure affordability and food access. So it's kind of a circuitous answer. I'm sorry for that. There isn't, you know, one moment where we say on page 42, like, make food cheaper by writing everybody a check. But we do say work together to drive the cost
I
down.
can't remember who said it, I did hear that, it was suggested that access to food was a human right,
Mhm.
but I didn't
Yeah.
hear it was access to affordable food.
Mhm.
So to me, unless it's affordable,
Yeah,
it's just lip service.
yeah, yeah.
I think,
The National Right to Food Framework, I think is one that would be interesting to explore. So within the national right, so there's a right to food community of practice that was started in the United States. And so they have a definition of what right to food is. And among that, it is that food is accessible and affordable. So that is within the framework of this like standard that is being collectively used across like the nation. I can at least speak to that. But I think to make that happen, it's obviously very complex. The city does not purchase food for people. So I think, you know, creating these connections and helping to strengthen the local food economy and strengthen the local food system, I think it's like this like backdoor way to hopefully making it affordable. There are some suggestions in there with regards to the city exploring under delicious healthy diets, like food as medicine type programs. So if we're looking to make sure that these foods that are nourishing for bodies and are medically appropriate for people are affordable, we know that those are often more expensive many times, and they're not as accessible for folks. So there are ideas from other cities or counties that they've done to essentially sort of like subsidize it. It's not like a subsidy program for the entire city though. But I would encourage you, you know, if you're interested in the concept of right to food, to check out the national, I think it's the National Right to Food Community of Practice is what it's called. So that was a little bit was in my mind too, as I was, you know, reading the plan that the team had provided to us and knowing that I participate in that community of practice. And hoping that, I think it's actually linked in the actual document. So for the person who is implementing the plan to use that as a reference and a framework for defining right to food going forward.
Could you give me a sense of the cross-section of people that you've spoken to over the past week? You say that you're listening, I'm not quite sure, you were listening to obviously residents, but I don't know if there are other, you're speaking to teachers.
Yeah, there's some pretty good illustration of exactly, we spoke to 241 people through the process, and they're in the report, there are pie charts that break them out by identity and sort of their role within the food system. So
that would include residents, obviously, the parents, teachers. I mean, can you give me a sense of, or is it in the report?
yeah, it's definitely in the report, but yes, it's parents and teachers. Yes, it's folks who are working within the school district. We spoke with food retailers, we spoke with farmers, we spoke with indigenous people, we spoke with people experiencing food insecurity, we spoke with the LGBTQ community, we spoke with, rattling off now, I think there were 7 or 9. And they're listed in the report, but there were a set of identities that we dove deep on. But then we also did a survey, and we did a handful of workshops and public engagement events where we talked to anybody who would talk to us when we were standing there with our pictures of Kingston's food system under a tent at the farmer's market.
So you said 241 people.
241 people in total.
Thank you.
Yeah.
In thinking about Kingston specifically, were there a few examples that you can think of, maybe the more interesting parts of the work that demonstrated or showed where Kingston has an opportunity, you know, thinking about its strengths and where we are in the Hudson Valley, or maybe examples of where Kingston is falling behind peer communities where there's a gap to close?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't, we didn't do a comparator assessment, but we did look at Kingston's food systems and we used a technique called systemogram. So we co-created a big map with arrows and circles of all the different kinds of things that are happening in Kingston's food system. And then we said, like, what's happening here that's positive and has energy, or what's like frozen and stuck and not working right? And so we identified what we called leverage points within the system. And one of Kingston's leverage points that comes to mind for me right now is Kingston's like really lively, vibrant restaurant scene, for example. Lots of energy, lots of dynamics around it. It's got some of those like historically marginalized identities who, restaurant owners who are doing great things and drawing people to Kingston. That's an example of something that's really dynamic, hot on fire. Follow that leverage point. So we have 5 or 6 in the report where some it's like, this is stuck, it's not moving at all, and largely, it's about institutional incentives, or it's sort of outside of the city's control. But there's other areas where, there are bright sparks of sort of optimism. So yeah, I would say one is the restaurant, but also some of the not-for-profit and food access community partners that are active in Kingston, I think are really an important part of the story. Maybe you can build on that.
I was going to mention, I think that one of them was the solidarity activities. And so an example of that are the community fridges that are in Kingston. So I think there are now in Kingston 4 or 5, no one's correcting me. Okay, 4. Okay, thank you. I was like, there is somebody in this room who knows how many community fridges there are. There are 4 in Kingston, and I just remember that was such a bright spot. And I also, as someone who works within like the food space, I always felt like Kingston really had a strong solidarity economy, and they had a lot of interest in it as well. So I feel like there was a lot of like momentum behind that, in addition to having these 4 successful community fridges that are not operating as like nonprofits and they're not operating within the traditional emergency food system that we think of for food pantries and soup kitchens or community cafes. They're just fridges that an organization is providing electricity for, and that community members are putting food in, and there's no requirement for people to get food from it. So it's this really low barrier way to people accessing food, and the Kingston community is keeping that going. So it's not an institution, it's not top down. Like that feels like very special to me. And I think that came out a lot. And particularly in one of the workshops that Angela's team hosted, people were really excited about community fridges. So, solidarity activities really stood out to me.
I have a zillion questions in my head, but can you talk a little bit about community gardens? Planting wild plants. I'm a forager and I'm a wild food person. I'm a licensed wild mushroom forager. And I've always been donating to People's Place for, making soups and whatnot. But, I have ways to get plants, like fiddlehead fern plants for community. I want to give to the community, and people spend so much money on these organic foods that I harvest brands. I think it's just highway robbery, and I want people to access it. I mean, there's so many people, 29% of the people here are on work at poverty level wages or minimum wage. How are they ever going to afford this great organic food? I want them to have access to it.
So I can talk to you about the gardens. First, let me say, what you have to donate. I think the community fridges is a great option. I know the Farm Hub does a lot of donations to our food pantry. So there is a little bit of a system there for donating those foods. And I can help connect you with those organizations if you'd like. To community gardens, if you go to I'll bring it up in a minute, but on the Live Well Kingston website under Grow Well. So one of the subcommittees for Live Well Kingston supports our community gardens here in Kingston. Each community garden is unique in its own little universe. So I say community gardens, but that's a broad definition. 2 are on city property, and I would say are true community gardens. They're open to everyone. The YMCA Farm Project is on the YMCA properties land and is its own program that's really wonderful if you're not familiar with them. And then we have other smaller little community gardens around, there's quite a few of them. There's one on the South Pine Street, that's on private property, so it's not technically a community garden. There's a brand new garden on Elmendorf called Urban Greens. That's a black lead garden that has just started. That's on Radio Kingston property. So go to livewellkingston.org, grow well, and we have a map there for our community gardens. If you're interested in getting involved, please come to one of our Grow Well meetings, connect with me, and I can try to connect you directly with one of the garden stewards. Many of them are looking for support. So please come on in.
What kind of support?
For the most, yeah. Mary, say that again. Yeah, shovel. Manual labor is the biggest need for community gardens.
So they're growing, so you have a new friend. Are you right in the city? You live in the city? Yeah.
Can I just comment on community gardens? I feel like there was a lot that we heard. There's a lot of interest and passion and excitement about community gardens within people who like food. I feel like it's accurate in saying that, like, as participating in Grow Well, there is maybe not as much excitement or time or availability to garden. And so I think there's like a lot of passion about community gardens, and they are such an incredible resource that we have, that all of the ones that Emily mentioned in Kingston. And before I maybe, this plan does not recommend starting new gardens because we have so many that already need support.
How many are there? You know?
I would guess 7, but I'll bring it up. Yeah.
Go to them, like, out of the community to go and get stuff directly. I mean,
we just have a
Come to a meeting. So there's people who sit down online, but and the events that like Emily shared, like some are on city property, but some are also on private property, and it's like collaboration maybe, or I don't know what the right word is. But it's just so you'll meet other people that are gardening. Some people are just gardening from their home or gardening from wherever, and just to get a better understanding of what's possible and what's already happening and what could just be supported. I generally recommend, I am not a gardener, but I do recommend to people to like look at your home and like draw a circle around it and decide where there you can be supportive, because sometimes people see like garden over there. And certainly if you have an affinity for a particular group, like you're like, oh no, this group really feels like the Urban Greens is where, you know, I feel called to. Like, I'm not trying to dissuade anyone, but if you kind of draw a circle around your home and say like, well, we're here.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
But I'll give you my number. Put it up on a billboard. Oh, we have, but I'm not trying to take it off the people.
Oh my God, Lord, please. And you'll see on our map, we have different categories. So we also mapped our pollinator gardens because they're part of the food system as well. So you'll see there's little micro pollinator gardens, but they're not community gardens in the true sense, right? And then we have community gardens that may sell or give out food. Then we have gardens that, let's see, I think this one was, may have, what does that one say? May have plots available. So, yeah. Go on. And there's a few at schools, for example, George Washington Elementary School. The high school has one, but that's not open to the public. The George Washington Elementary School garden, Cindy Moreau does have gardeners that come in that are not necessarily students. It's a little more open, is what I'm trying to say. Did you have another question about that? Yeah.
Can you just acknowledge the time if
Yeah.
someone has to leave? It's 7:06.
Thank you for that. Please feel free to come and go. We've got the room till 8. But,
Collaboration across city departments.
yeah,
Oh,
sure. Like, what does that mean, or what
Yeah.
could that look like? Yeah.
I mean,
I can talk to that. So I'm the director of health and wellness. So right now I'm a department of 1. We have other fantastic departments that we work with all the time. We have a new, is he still new? An urban forester here in the city of Kingston who is managing our trees. We work greatly with him. He's currently working on an invasive plant grant application. So that's one way that Brent and I have been collaborating a little bit. I don't take any of the credit. Brent's doing it all, but I support him in that application, for example. that's some cross partner, cross department. I work with the Department of Public Works, for example, in a lot of our streetscape and post office park that we just built in the last year. So we already have some really great relationships with other departments. And it's really about identifying where that overlaps with our food systems. But Brent is the first one that popped into my mind is I'll share it this way. The Kingston Land Trust is building an edible forest by the Rondout Garden that's down on Murray Street, where Rondout Gardens housing development is. They're building it right next to the basketball court. So we met with Parks and Rec to make sure that everyone was aware of who's maintaining what. But that's a project that's in development, and that's another example of how cross departments are working on it. Let me give other people a chance to ask a question, and then we can come back to you.
Thanks so much. And full disclosure, I haven't read the report, so this may be, I'm looking forward to, and congrats. I know this was like quite a process, so it's really great to see it come together. One question I had was just, I've just always been really interested in like this idea of a food systems plan and how it can help a city like Kingston kind of tell its story better of where its direction across like what is really complicated and oftentimes is a lot of different types of actors working often for the same like pots of money. So I'm just curious how, if there's any recommendations around like financing specifically for the food system, for initiative, all the different like, recommendations you mentioned, like how to mobilize money and resources for this. Thank you.
So I will say, I think that is a gap in the plan, that there is not while there's a sense of like, here are some ideas that you could take forward, and here are some funders that fund these kinds of processes or projects. We don't size anything specifically and say, City of Kingston, in order to implement this, here's the X $100,000 that you need. But we do have some specific, so thanks, Emily. Like I mean, just to say like what we do is give you just like if you were on a Yelp review or something, there's like $3 signs to $4 signs, lets you know that this kind of an initiative is going to be a little bit more expensive than another, but then it talks about the kinds of partners that you might be able to work with and where you might be able to find the money. So we talk about how big is the cost, but we don't total it all up and say it's going to cost X and here's exactly where you find it. So it's cost aware, but it's not super prescriptive on that. I don't know if you want to say more or if.
I'm gonna just like raise my hand, like, well, I did add a bullet point or two in there. So correct, it's like what Angela is saying. There are I'm trying to remember under which priority it is, but there's some bullet points in there that it's like, be inspired by this city. Consider this example, because we couldn't quite fully commit to saying like, we're going to do this. And there's one in there should be, that was be inspired. I know in Boulder, I'm trying to remember if there's one where it's the city of Boulder and one where it's the county of Boulder. They have two different taxes, and one of them has a sugar sweetened beverage tax that feeds into a health equity fund. So it's the tax on all sugar sweetened beverages that has been adopted within either the city or the county, I can't remember. And that money specifically goes towards health equity initiatives. So it was like, be inspired by this. Like if we had a sugar sweetened beverage tax, it's a small amount of money per item, but it would give some sort of funding source that could potentially go towards a food equity fund. And then they also have, it was like a general, like it was an excise tax, I think. Not really a tax expert. I should probably know more about all these different types of taxes, but it was like a sales tax that they added on top of for items that went towards a sustainability fund. Is that in there?
I don't know if this is the page you're talking about, but I think it shows that, like, and I have a couple printed copies if anybody wants to dive a little deeper in the plan, the kind of bullet points. And you know, the plan couldn't go into every detail, but you give us recommendations, explore, you know, the Niagara Falls, New York Local Food Action Plan to find inspiration for how to set up these additional programs.
Yeah, so there are some, in addition to using this plan as a foundation for pursuing grant opportunities, there was also some suggestions in there on how to find alternative sources of funding, and then you're actually on a good page, like go down, Emily.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Go back up, the one that you were at.
Yeah.
Like in here too, there's coordinate with Kingston Community Preservation Plan Committee to prioritize funding for the acquisition and development of agricultural land. So that was actually something that was recommended to me by Julie Noble to include in here. Julie's really been like leading that to say like, okay, well, the city of Kingston already has this other funding source that has been prioritized for community preservation. She was like, it makes sense to me that you could also work with the committee that is defining how they'll spend that money to suggest that priorities be placed for urban agriculture, if that is something that we want to move forward on. So there's like a few bullet points that I think are like peppered in there to be able to give an idea for it, even though it doesn't give a total roadmap for how to fund everything. But then, I don't know, Emily would, I guess.
I can add something.
Oh, great.
Hi, I'm Kristen. I was the former director of grants management for the city of Kingston. Now I work in the planning department for the county. And I was on the project advisory committee. Got here a little late, but I just wanted to say in answer to your question, I worked with a lot of plans and a lot of grants. And my feeling about sometimes plans will lay out these grandiose plans for funding, but it's actually not about what's in the plan. It's about what happens on the ground after the plan is done and who and where synergies come together and where people gather and have energy to put forth. And then if there's a group of people who are really passionate about making a project happen, then the city they have a grants management team with 3 people on it and or 2.5 or something.
It's 2.
Okay, it's 2 now. So they have a team and then you can start identifying sources in real time. Because a lot of times sources, especially now with the federal, I mean, all the federal, I don't know where it all is. Well, I know where it is. It's in the White House. But it's, it's funny.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Any plans to attract grocery stores, say food desert wise, like maybe the city could give tax exemptions to grocery stores to operate? Is there any kind of suggestions about how the city could run a grocery store?
If this,
No.
my memory is that the plan really talks about smaller food sources, especially in Pankaki and East Kingston, where it's a food desert. So it really talks about encouraging the smaller, well, first of all, we changed our zoning so that we can have smaller corner, businesses and stores back in our communities. And then the goal is to have, I think it's 10 fruits or vegetables in those local, so I don't think, we're not moving towards bringing in another grocery store, but looking more in the smaller scale, smaller businesses in our community here in Kingston.
I think there's an opportunity to dovetail those efforts with the increased SNAP acceptance, which I think is really important. And there's also, there's physical stores, but we also need to remember that we're sort of at the cusp of sort of grocery delivery and online purchasing, and that's becoming much more accessible and often preferable for folks who are using SNAP benefits. So as we see that come online and become more pervasive as well, hopefully we get to better solutions, even if it doesn't mean, a physical incentive for another larger grocery store.
Well, like small producers that I sell to, we had a place where people needed it, that they could sell their groceries, like a farmer's market, but for everybody.
And the plan does identify that at one time there was a Midtown pop-up farmers market. The plan says to learn the lessons from that because it wasn't completely successful. No, that was before that.
So good.
Do you remember it? Yes, Lori. Yeah.
So subsidized, so that way, so the farmer's market that's uptown, which I don't even go to. So it feels like I don't know anyone there. But it used to be, then midweek, there was a rendition of it, not with all of the same people. It was smaller and I believe there was some sort of subsidy, I don't know who gave it, because then the prices were cheaper, so you could get the same potatoes per pound that were $2 per pound on weekends, were $1 per pound, and it was where the King's Inn, it's like a.
Pauline Listening Plaza. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a little gas station was close by, but anyway, not far from UPAC.
Yeah.
Well, you've highlighted the role of YMCA farm, and I don't know if it's mentioned specifically in there, but one of their greatest strengths is the Thursday afternoon and the Tuesday morning market.
Yeah.
Building on that, that seems like an opportunity.
And that's
for the whole year, they are amazing.
And that's a great if I could just, that's a great transition. I see that Pat
That's,
Tilda's,
you
yeah.
have a whole market where you can
Mhm.
buy vegetables, very affordable.
Where?
Tilda's.
Is that weekly, every day?
I think they're open weekly, like Monday to Friday, but yeah, and they also have once a month, I think they have like free breakfast and dinner.
So Pat has his hand raised. You can't see it on the screen, but Pat, do you want to unmute yourself and ask and chime in? Because we have lots of love for the YMCA Farm Project in this conversation.
Hi there. Yeah, I really appreciate that. Appreciate everyone's working on this, and thanks for providing childcare in whatever capacity y'all are, as well as thanks to the interpreters. It's a lot of work to try and convey all of our passionate food-related commentary. Yeah, I work at the Y Farm. I agree, it's a really important resource at the moment for people that are on benefits, because we do accept SNAP and WIC and FMNP. And there was this new report that just came out a couple weeks ago about food insecurity in Ulster County, and they adjusted like the food secure average for an annual income is like $125,000. So I think just acknowledging the reality of finances and how that intersects with people getting food. I know Lori was just talking about the challenge of prices at the Uptown Market, but yeah, I look forward to hearing about potential opportunities for Midtown markets again. The double up bucks with SNAP is really essential. And yeah, I hope this plan recommends, it's Kingston is a, relatively small budget of, I think they just approved of whatever, 60 million or something. But, um, you know, there's a lot of different ways we can move that money around. You drive up and down Broadway and the number of cop cars that are just hanging out watching people. Meanwhile, we know that what leads to quote unquote crime is yeah, they're more related to food and housing than treating symptoms rather than treating the roots of these causes. And I think food access is one of those. And yeah, one thing I'm going to try and suggest is what's up with that Rite Aid building? I feel like the city should take that over and establish like a cafeteria, because um, that's where the old Trailways building used to be. There was a 24-hour delicatessen there that people could just get food at. And yeah, I'm just looking forward to seeing the imagination that can come along with all this research. Thanks.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you for all of that. Pelican, Pat, I'm not going to say your last name right.
It's Pelicano, like pelican, two L's in
Pelicano, Pelicano, he says.
Pelican.
And Pat is a part of our Grow Well team, so if you join our meetings, you can get to see Pat. Other questions? Comments? Yeah.
People being able to get to the product.
Yes.
Again, we're just assuming that people can just get to these places to get the food? That's one of my biggest thoughts right now.
I would say we're not assuming that they can get to these places. In fact, a large part of the plan, and that was a lot of the feedback that we heard from people. And honestly, that's the feedback we hear. So Live Well Kingston works on creating access to all of the things that makes us healthy. Again and again, it comes back to transportation.
Right.
I know, Laura, you feel it too. I can say that the city is doing some great work in active transportation and walking and biking access. We've created the Green Line. We did a bike and ped master plan. We applied for a grant for a rentable bike system that please send me a prayer. I hope we get it next year. I really want to run that program. It's not enough. We need, our public bus system is at the county level. That's undergoing an optimization plan right now. I think the comments might still be open for that. Feel free to give your feedback on it. I think I would say that almost most people agree that public transportation, we need more of it, and it's just a complicated issue, and it's something that I think everyone is working towards to try to improve, but there's still work to be done. Other questions, other thoughts? I don't see other hands up online, but if any, oh, Pat, you got your hand up again. Yes, Pat, chime in again.
Just quickly, where is the report? Is it on Engage Kingston or?
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you go to Engage Kingston, it's on the main page. And then if you want the direct URL, it's /food systems plan. The final draft is what we're calling this iteration of it is there's a big image on the website there. You click on that, you can download it. Please send us, Pat. I know you've got some comments. Please give us some comments by January 7th in that form there. And like I said, I have a couple of printed out copies if anybody wants to thumb through it tonight.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Other questions? Listener thoughts? All right. You still have time to give us feedback. I'm going to say it one more time. Give me your comments on Engage. If you don't want to do it on Engage, you can call me, you can email me, and I'll incorporate them in any way. I can also meet with you at another time. I'm happy to get coffee with anybody anytime. Other than that, I think I'll conclude sort of our formal talk here. I'm going to go eat some food in the other room. Come chat with me over there. Please come take some home, and we'll say goodbye to our Zoom friends. And thank you everyone for coming out on a snowy night. Really appreciate it. Thanks everyone. All right. Bye.
Kristen.
Hi.
How are you?